When people hear nuclear winter, they imagine snow, darkness, and a dramatic freeze. That mental image is already dangerous. What kills in a true nuclear winter scenario is not cinematic cold. It is system failure. Power is gone. Heating is gone. Fuel is gone. Rescue is irrelevant. At 20 the core, without heating, your body is placed on a countdown measured in hours, sometimes minutes, depending on your decisions. Cold at this level is not passive. It is aggressive. Heat leaves your body through wind stripping it away, the ground pulling it out of you, moisture evaporating it, and your own breathing bleeding warmth with every exhale. You do not die because it is too cold. You die because heat loss outpaces heat production, and once that gap opens, it widens fast. This is why most people fail early. They focus on tools, weapons, or stockpiles and ignore the only metric that matters: thermal balance. Survival is not about bravery, toughness, or pain tolerance. It is about insulation, dryness, and wind discipline. Nothing else matters until those are solved. In 20-degree CC, mistakes compound. Sweat becomes ice. Wet fabric becomes a heat sink. A single exposed seam becomes a leak that drains you all night. Sleep. The moment you stop generating heat, becomes the most dangerous activity of the day. This video is not about comfort. It is about buying time. The Nuclear Winter Kit is not a collection of gear. It is a portable microclimate designed to slow heat loss when the world no longer helps you. 9 items used correctly can mean the difference between lasting a night and lasting long enough to make another decision. Everything that follows is built on that reality. At 20-6, survival is governed by physics, not mindset. Your body produces a limited amount of heat, and the environment is constantly trying to steal it faster than you can replace it. This happens through 5 primary pathways, and if you do not actively control all of them, failure is inevitable. The first is convection. Wind is not just uncomfortable, it is an extraction mechanism. Moving air strips away the thin layer of warm air your body creates around itself. Even a light breeze can double or triple heat loss, which is why exposed skin or porous clothing becomes dangerous long before you feel cold. Wind always wins unless you block it completely. The second is conduction. Any direct contact with cold materials drains heat through touch. The ground is the most lethal conductor in cold environments because it never warms up. Sitting, kneeling, or sleeping directly on cold surfaces can pull core heat faster than the air ever could. People often underestimate this because the loss feels gradual, but by the time symptoms appear, recovery is difficult. The third pathway is evaporation. Sweat is catastrophic at 20°C. Moisture evaporating from your skin pulls heat with it, and once fabric becomes damp, it turns into a thermal liability. This is why working hard to stay warm is one of the most common fatal errors. Overheating leads to sweating. Sweating leads to moisture retention, and moisture leads to accelerated heat loss the moment you stop moving. The fourth is respiration. Every breath you exhale carries heat and moisture out of your body. In extreme cold, heavy breathing compounds heat loss, especially during exertion. This is rarely discussed, but it explains why people can feel colder after intense movement than before it. Your lungs are part of the heat equation, whether you acknowledge it or not. The fifth and most underestimated is sleep. When you sleep, your metabolic heat production drops. You are no longer actively compensating for losses. This is why people often make it through the day and then crash at night. Sleep is not rest in 20T. It is the most vulnerable phase of the cycle. From these 5 pathways emerge 4 absolute rules. Never sweat. Never allow direct contact with cold ground. Never expose skin or insulation to wind. Never rely on a single layer or single solution. Cold kills through accumulation, not a single mistake. This leads to the core concept of survival in nuclear winter conditions. You must carry and defend a microclimate. Your goal is not to fight the environment, but to isolate yourself from it. Inside that microclimate, air is still, moisture is controlled, insulation is intact, and heat loss is slowed enough for your body to keep up. Every item in the nuclear winter kit exists to protect one or more sides of this equation. If even one pathway is ignored, the system collapses. Survival, then, is not about endurance. It is about discipline. The people who last are not the strongest. They are the ones who respect the math and never violate the rules. With that framework established, we can now break down the 9 items that form a functional portable microclimate when heating no longer exists. In 20 degrees C, without heating, your clothing is no longer what you wear. It becomes a life support system. These first 4 items exist to create a stable, portable climate around your body while you move. If any one of them is wrong, the entire system fails, usually without warning. Item 1. The dry base layer. This layer touches your skin, which makes it the most important and the most misunderstood. Its only job is moisture control. It must move sweat away from your body and dry quickly, even in cold air. Merino wool or high-quality synthetic fibers do this. Cotton does not. Cotton absorbs moisture, holds it, and then becomes a cold sponge pressed against your skin. In 20 degrees C, that is a delayed death sentence. The base layer should fit close without compression, cover the entire torso, and extend fully to wrists and ankles. Any exposed skin becomes an evaporation point, and evaporation is heat theft. This layer is not for warmth, it is for dryness. Warmth comes later. Item 2. The primary insulation layer. This is where warmth is actually created not by fabric heat, but by trapped air. Loft equals survival. A high loft puffy jacket or dense fleece mid-layer creates thousands of tiny air pockets that slow heat loss. The key rule here is non-compression. Insulation that is too tight loses loft and stops working. Insulation that is too loose allows air movement inside and bleeds heat. This layer must be sized to sit comfortably over the base layer without squeezing it. It should extend over the lower back and core because your torso houses the organs that keep you alive. Cold arms are uncomfortable. A cold core is fatal. Item 3. The hard wind shell. Wind is not cold. It is a heat extractor. This layer is your mobile wall. It must block wind completely, not mostly, not breathable enough, but decisively. A proper shell prevents convective heat loss and protects the insulation underneath from snow, ice, and external moisture. This is where many people fail by choosing fashion shells or lightweight rain layers that leak air at seams and zippers. In 20 degrees, even small leaks become large losses over time. The shell should have a hood, sealed closures, and enough room to cover your insulation without crushing it. Think of it as the outer skin of your microclimate. Item 4. Vapor barrier components. This is the most controversial and least understood item, but it is critical in prolonged cold. Vapor barriers are used selectively, not constantly. Their purpose is to stop moisture from leaving your body and saturating your insulation. Feet, hands, and sometimes the torso are the primary targets. Vapor barrier socks or liners are worn over a thin base sock and under insulation, trapping moisture close to the skin while keeping insulation dry. This feels wrong to people who have never used the system, but it prevents the slow death of insulation collapse over multiple days. The rule is control. not comfort. Vapor barriers are used during rest periods, sleep, or long cold exposure, and vented during movement to prevent overheating. These 4 items only work if you follow the protocol that ties them together. The most important rule is movement pacing. You must never move fast enough to sweat. That means slower walking, deliberate actions, and frequent micro-adjustments like unzipping the shell briefly or venting insulation before moisture builds. Sweat is not a minor issue. It is the beginning of system failure. The second rule is vent early, not late. Once you feel hot, it is already too late. You adjust before heat builds, not after. The third rule is layer discipline. You never remove insulation in the wind, and you never expose your base layer to the open air unless conditions are controlled. Small lapses repeated over time are what kill experienced people. Together, these 4 items form a wearable climate system. They do not keep you warm in the casual sense. They slow heat loss enough that your body can maintain equilibrium. That equilibrium is fragile, and it must be defended constantly. In 20 degrees C, clothing is not passive protection. It is an active system that demands attention, restraint, and discipline. With the wearable microclimate established, the next failure point is predictable and deadly: sleep. When movement stops and heat production drops, everything changes. And that is where items 5 and 6 determine whether you wake up at all. If daytime cold tests discipline, nighttime cold tests survival. Most people who fail in 20 degree C conditions do not collapse while moving. They collapse when they stop. Sleep is the moment your body produces the least heat. Your awareness is gone, and small mistakes become irreversible. Items 5 and 6 exist to prevent the single most common fatal pattern in extreme cold: making it through the day and not waking up. Item 5. The cold-rated sleep system. A proper sleep bag or quilt rated for deep cold is not optional. Ratings matter, but only if you understand them. Comfort ratings assume a well-fed, dry person using a ground pad in controlled conditions. In a nuclear winter scenario, you must assume less. This means choosing a bag rated significantly colder than your environment and using a liner to add modular insulation and moisture protection. The liner is not just for warmth. It absorbs body moisture before it reaches the bag's insulation, extending performance over multiple nights. Down provides superior warmth to weight, but is vulnerable to moisture. Synthetic insulation is heavier, but more forgiving. The correct choice depends on duration, humidity control, and your discipline, not marketing claims. The sleep system must be treated as a protected asset. You never sit in it during the day. You never allow snow or sweat inside it. You only enter it dry. That means changing into dedicated sleep layers, even if they are thinner than your daytime clothing. Dryness at night is more important than thickness. Wet insulation at rest does not dry out in 20 degrees C. It slowly kills heat retention hour by hour. Item 6. Ground insulation with redundancy. The ground is colder than the air and far more efficient at stealing heat. This is where most people underestimate loss because they focus on the bag and ignore what is underneath. A high R-value sleeping pad is mandatory. Inflatable pads provide excellent insulation, but are vulnerable to puncture and valve failure. Closed-cell foam pads provide less insulation but cannot fail completely. The correct approach is redundancy, an inflatable pad for primary insulation with a closed-cell pad as backup or supplement. Together, they create a thermal barrier that stops conductive heat loss into frozen ground, concrete, or packed snow. Ground insulation also defines positioning. You never sleep directly on bare surfaces. You elevate, layer, and insulate, even if it means discomfort or extra setup time. The few minutes saved by cutting corners are repaid with hours of heat loss you cannot afford. Sleep discipline matters as much as equipment. Before sleeping, you eat. Calories are heat. Fats provide long-burning warmth. Sugars provide immediate fuel. You hydrate, but not excessively, because dehydration increases cold stress, while overhydration forces you to leave insulation at night. You ventilate the sleep system just enough to manage condensation from breath without allowing cold air to circulate. Breathing moisture is unavoidable, but directing it away from insulation slows degradation. Feet and core receive priority. Cold feet wake you repeatedly and drain morale. A cold core ends the night entirely. Vapor barrier socks or liners may be used here to protect insulation, even if they feel uncomfortable. Comfort is irrelevant at this stage. Stability is the objective. There is also a waking protocol. You do not burst out of the bag into cold air. You generate heat inside the system first by flexing, clenching, and controlled movement before exposure. This preserves core temperature and reduces shock. Many people lose precious heat in the first minutes of the morning by moving too fast, too exposed, too soon. Items 5 and 6 transform sleep from a liability into a controlled phase of survival. They do not make sleep easy. They make it survivable. Without them, nighttime becomes a gamble where fatigue slowly overrides judgment. With them, sleep becomes a calculated risk managed by insulation, dryness, and routine. Once sleep is stabilized, the final layer of survival remains. Shelter, water, and calories decide whether your microclimate can exist beyond your body. That is where items 7 through 9 complete the system. Once your body and sleep are protected, survival in 20 degrees shifts outward. Items 7 through 9 do not replace your wearable or sleep systems. They protect them. Without shelter, water, and calories, even the best insulation fails. These are not support items. They are structural to the microclimate you are trying to maintain. Item 7. The shelter and windbreak system. Shelter in nuclear winter conditions is not about comfort or space. It is about wind control. Wind is the multiplier that turns manageable cold into lethal cold. A tarp-based shelter system with strong cordage and reliable anchors allows you to create a low-profile wind barrier wherever you stop. The goal is not a tent fantasy with standing room and open doors. The goal is a sealed, compact microclimate that blocks airflow, sheds snow, and reflects some radiant heat back toward you. Low pitch matters. The lower the shelter, the less wind it catches, and the less interior air volume you must warm. Snow walls, terrain features, and debris can be used to reinforce the structure, but only if they do not introduce moisture inside. Every shelter decision should answer one question. Does this reduce convective heat loss? If it does not, it is decorative, not functional. Item 8. The insulated water system. Dehydration accelerates hypothermia, but frozen water is useless water. In 20 Tagake, water management becomes a daily battle. Wide-mouth bottles resist freezing better than narrow ones and are easier to thaw. Insulation sleeves slow freezing, but do not stop it indefinitely. The real protocol is inversion and routine. Bottles are stored upside down, so ice forms at the bottom, not the opening. At night, water is placed inside insulation or inside the sleep system to keep it above freezing. This is not optional. Losing liquid water forces snow melting, which costs calories and time you may not have. Purification still matters. Nuclear winter does not make pathogens disappear. Boiling may be impossible without fuel, so chemical or filtration methods must be chosen with cold performance in mind. Hydration must be regular but controlled. Dehydration thickens blood, reduces circulation, and worsens cold injury. Overhydration forces unnecessary exposure. Balance is survival. Item 9. The Calorie and Electrolyte Kit. Food in extreme cold is not about hunger. It is about combustion. Your body burns calories to generate heat, and without a steady supply, insulation becomes meaningless. Dense fats are the backbone of cold survival. They provide slow, sustained energy that supports heat production over hours. Fast sugars have a role as well, but only as immediate fuel during exertion or recovery. Electrolytes are often ignored, but they support nerve function and circulation, both of which degrade in cold stress. Rationing follows a cold-specific logic. You eat before rest, not after exhaustion. You do not wait for hunger signals because cold suppresses them. Small, frequent intake stabilizes metabolism better than large, infrequent meals. A person with full insulation and no calories will still fail. A person with calories and no insulation will fail faster. The system only works together. These three items interact constantly. Shelter reduces wind, which reduces calorie burn. Calories fuel heat, which protects water from freezing inside the body. Water supports circulation, which allows insulation to function properly. Remove one, and the others degrade rapidly. The mistake most people make is treating these as separate categories. They are not. Shelter placement affects how much you sweat. Water availability affects how much food you can digest. Food timing affects sleep quality. Everything is linked, and in 20 degrees Celsius, small inefficiencies become fatal over time. Items 7 through 9 complete the external shell of your survival system. They allow the microclimate you carry on your body to exist in a hostile world long enough to matter. At this point, you are not comfortable, but you are stable. And stability is the only condition under which good decisions are possible. In the final section, we will collapse all 9 items into a single operational protocol and identify the 3 failure patterns that kill even experienced survivors in true extreme cold. By themselves, none of the 9 items guarantee survival. Their power comes from integration. In 20 to C, without heating, you are not managing gear. You are managing heat flow. Every decision either protects thermal stability or accelerates collapse. The moment you treat an item as optional, the system begins to fail. The first fatal pattern is sweating. People move too fast, overlayer too early, or ignore early heat buildup. Moisture enters the system, insulation degrades, and the damage often shows up hours later when it can no longer be reversed. Discipline means moving slowly, venting early, and accepting discomfort to preserve dryness. The second pattern is ground contact. Sitting, kneeling, or sleeping without insulation drains heat continuously. This loss is quiet and deceptive, which is why it kills experienced people who feel fine until they do not. Ground insulation is not a comfort upgrade. It is a structural barrier. Without it, sleep becomes a countdown. The third pattern is fatigue-driven decisions. As cold and exhaustion accumulate, people simplify. They skip shelter setup, delay eating, or ignore water routines. These shortcuts feel logical in the moment and lethal later. Survival in extreme cold demands routine, even when motivation disappears. The correct mindset is not toughness, but conservation. You are not fighting the environment. You are isolating yourself from it. The 9-item nuclear winter kit creates a portable microclimate where air is still, moisture is controlled, wind is blocked, calories are available, and heat loss is slowed enough for your body to survive. Comfort is not the objective. Endurance is not the objective. Thermal stability is the objective. When stability is maintained, time becomes your ally. When it is lost, time works against you. In a true nuclear winter scenario, surviving 20°C without heating is not about heroics. It is about respecting the math, following the rules, and never breaking the system you depend on to stay alive.